If Kansas State's defense is going to be elite this season, it'll be because of Nate Johnson.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. We're going to continue the basketball breakdown, the men's basketball preview, as we look through all of the players on the roster, all 14 of them. We're going to get through player 4, 5, and 6 on today's episode. We broke down the first three in no particular order, but we broke them down starting yesterday, and we're going to continue that on as we get closer and closer to the Kansas State basketball men's season, with the exhibition starting 1 week from today against Missouri. Before we get into that, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download that FanDuel app today. We're going to get into three players today, and the first one I want to talk about is Nate Johnson. I think that he is one of the huge X factors for Kansas State this season. We started yesterday's show talking about PJ Haggerty, the All-American, how he has to be the guy to lead the charge. And I completely agree. He has to be. If Kansas State's going to be a tournament team, if Kansas State wants to be a team that competes in the Big 12, PJ Haggerty has to ball out. However, some of these other players around him also have to step up as well. And I think Nate Johnson is that next one in line. I think he has to be your number two, your right-hand man to PJ Haggerty, and maybe even battle him for a 1A, 1B type of conversation on the roster. Nate Johnson has the type of accolades to prove that he can be a top guy on a team, a top dog, and I want to talk about that on today's episode. Nate Johnson is a transfer coming in from Akron, a MAC team, and while he was there last season, he was the MAC Player of the Year and the MAC Defensive Player of the Year. So, as speaking about being elite defense, 100% believe that he is going to be on that. He's not just a scorer. He is a competitor who refuses to lose, and Akron was a very good basketball team last year. Made the tournament. I thought they might even shock some people in the tournament. That did not happen. But overall, I do think they were a good program, and you're getting a good one coming over to Manhattan. He's a 6'3" guard. He's from Liberty Township, Ohio. And while his progression at Akron continued to improve, it'll make you wonder if he can make that big next step from the MAC to the Big 12. That is a big jump. I think he can do it, though. He has the type of intangibles to make it happen. But talking about that career progression, he had 4.5 points per game as a freshman. Then as a sophomore, he bumped it up to 7.3. And then last year as a junior, he had 14 points per game. He averaged those 14 points plus just under 5 rebounds at 4.9, 3.4 assists, and 1.7 steals, while shooting a pretty impressive 43.9% from the field last season for the Zips. And again, became the first player in MAC history since Bonzi Wells. Remember that name? That's a name if you're a basketball fan growing up in the late 90s as a kid. Definitely something that I remember. Since Bonzi Wells in 1998 to win both Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. He was also the MAC tournament MVP. That came because of a 31-point semifinal performance and a 22-point championship game performance from Nate Johnson. He's a two-time NCAA tournament participant, something that Kansas State hardly has because you didn't make the tournament this last 2 years. So bringing in, again, another winner to the program. We talked about that on yesterday's episode with PJ Haggerty, with Kamari McGriff. You're bringing in winners. And that's something that you absolutely need to do, bringing in and reshaping the culture, getting the buy-in, getting new buzzwords. And if it's a winner mentality, then count me in. Again, he had matchups against Arizona and others. The game last year against Arizona, they were one of my bracket busters, if you will, because I thought that they were going to upset Arizona, a Big 12 team. It just didn't happen that way. That's the type of ability that I think Nate Johnson has. I think he has the ability to compete with Big 12 schools and be a very good player on this roster. Coach Tang called him a, quote, do whatever it takes to win guy. And when you're talking about how Kansas State was last year with the peaks and valleys, with the slow start, I don't think you're going to have that if Nate Johnson is on the court. They saw him play last year in the Cayman Islands Classic, and Johnson told him it became a dream to one day play for Tang at Kansas State. So I think he's a versatile defender. He can guard the 1 through 4, which is excellent. And if you have a smaller 5 out there, I think he probably could take care of that as well. He's tough. He's physical. If you want to go ahead and say it, I think it's a fair assessment to say he's got blue collar mentality. And that work ethic is absolutely something that you need to have if you're trying to rebuild that culture. We're starting to hear that a lot with some of these players that we're building up so far this season, that the work ethic is unmatched. And that sounds like a great trait to bring into this program after what happened last season. He plays through contact. He relishes defensive assignments. I think he's going to be a fantastic fit. And I think when it's all said and done, would not shock me in the slightest if he is named to the All Big 12 Defensive Team of the Year, maybe even become the All Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Jerome Tang compares his demeanor to Marquis Nowell. Quiet off the court, ruthless on it. And of course, the hardworking. Gotta love that for sure. He's likely going to play a combo guard role, which is great when you have him and PJ Haggerty on the court at the same time. Maybe you can have some rotation where one of them are always on the court at the same time. That would be pretty dynamic, especially when you get the conference play. Somewhere in between a scoring initiator and a tone setter. So I could see him being one of the guys that maybe facilitates early. I would not be shocked if maybe they go with Nate Johnson over PJ Haggerty for the facilitation portion and being that tone center right away in the game. Not saying that PJ Haggerty won't be on the court, but maybe the ball might go through Nate early. Because remember last year, and this has been actually an issue for quite a couple of years under Jerome Tang, the first 4 minutes have been dreadful for Kansas State basketball. Setting the tone will be absolutely crucial. If that's something that Nate Johnson can take advantage of early in the games, if that could be one of his known things, then that would be huge moving forward for Kansas State. I saw this comparison. I can't remember where I saw it. I want to say maybe the on three guys for Kansas State, but they compared him to Barry Brown, and I like it. I think it's a nice type of comparison, if you will, because Barry Brown, of course, won the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year back in, I believe it was 2019. Gritty defender, streak scorer, leadership, and I think Nate Johnson could fill all those boxes as well. Immediate impact. He's got toughness, rebounding, vocal defensive anchor as well. All of those things are things you're going to need for Kansas State this season. If you have to say anything that he needs to improve, and maybe that just doesn't have to be his game this year because there are going to be other players who can step up and do that. We're going to get to them later on in these breakdowns. But I think he does need to improve his three-point efficiency. He was only 30% last season. But when you talk about all the other things of his game, maybe that's just not one thing that he has to push. Now, of course, I'm sure he'd like to shoot better from beyond the arc, but his ability to drive, finish, and draw fouls, just like PJ Haggerty, translates well into Big 12 play. So having them both on the court are going to be absolutely dynamic. And I think this offense is going to take off. So when you have Nate Johnson on the court, I think it's a culture reset for Kansas State, something that was absolutely missing this past offseason, this past season where they missed the tournament. A player that can be built on toughness, humility, and winning habits. And I do think that this is the type of player that can get you to be a defensive, tough team also while not losing anything on the offensive side. It seemed like you had to pick a side over the last couple of years where you're either going to be an offensive guy or a defensive guy. Jerome Tang has really focused on the defense over the last couple of years, and the offense has kind of hurt from it. And we've had some issues on offense and rebounding as well. With a guy like Nate Johnson, you're not giving anything up. You're getting a guy who is not afraid to drive the lane, and you're getting an elite defender on the court. So add him with PJ Haggerty and some of the other starters in here, and you're going to have a really good season for Kansas State, assuming everything goes the way you want it to. All right, next up, a player who's always become a fan favorite for his energy, his personality, and, of course, that international story. We're going to get to that next right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on who delivered. Powered by DoorDash, just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving you more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down for Kansas State against TCU. Have to go with Joe Jackson. First time hitting 100 yards in his career. He definitely stepped up when the pressure was on. No Dylan Edwards. Didn't matter. No hesitation. No delay. He took care of business. And if you've been watching week after week, especially the last 2 weeks, it's not a fluke. His performance is not a fluke. He's starting to become that type of starting running back kind of vibes that we've been hoping for. And that guy's name is Joe Jackson. So just like Joe Jackson delivered for Kansas State, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak alive, and fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period ends 11/8. This episode of Locked On Kansas State is also brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get the crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. With over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items for more trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting your projects, and their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. So join that free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like those priority shippings, lower prices, and that dedicated support line. All you have to do is visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free. And if you use the promo code SHCollege5, you'll get an additional 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State. We are giving you the basketball breakdown here. And for the next player here, it's Moby Ike Garuke. And what a fun player he is. The energy, the excitement behind him. I think he had one of the coolest moments last season. There's a lot of excitement behind Moby. And we heard that he's going to be at Big 12 Media Days coming up in just a few days. So maybe his role is going to be a little bit more. Of course, the spark plug with global roots. Moby is a 6'6" athletic wing. He's from Galway, Ireland. He's played in Ireland. He's played in the Czech Republic. And now, of course, in Manhattan, Kansas. Fans already love him. I don't have to tell you much about Moby, but even with his limited minutes last season, he has energy, his personality, and his defense has really grew in this Wildcats scheme. He started overseas. Then he dominated at Ellsworth Community College, which there he had 19 points, 10 rebounds, averaging a double-double, of course, with 2 steals per game, and was named the NGCAA D2 second team All-American. After that, he joined Kansas State this past season, last year, and carved out a role as an energy wing. That's what we like to call that. And he averaged just under 3 points per game and under three rebounds per game in just the limited minutes. But he showed efficiency, elite efficiency, if you will. He had 60% from the field goal range in only his 8 minutes played and his 24 games played. And I think you could start to see, maybe the wheels start to turn for more progress for Moby moving forward. Coach Tang has known him since he was 17 years old. He knows me better than most coaches who recruited me. That's what Moby has quoted in the past. And he loves the Kansas State family atmosphere. He's been quoted in interviews saying that this place really has a home environment with everyone being together. And he's described how Manhattan is rare for how quickly it's felt like home for him. I like when he talks about his defense. He said that he compares himself to an NBA defensive great player of the past decade of Avery Bradley. If you remember him, he's a first-round pick in 2010 from the Boston Celtics, was an All-NBA first-team player in 2016, second-team player on the defensive side in 2013. And Moby says he prides himself on-ball defense, energy, and rebounding. The quote here that I love is, "If I'm guarding the ball, I don't want to just guard it. I want to take it." And that kind of brings you back to those community college numbers when he was averaging almost 2 steals per game on top of that double. So he's got high motor. He's got high first mentality, team first mentality, I should say. And Tang calls him a big time acrobatic finisher with a versatile defender who can guard 1 through 4. So just like Nate Johnson, you can see him guarding multiple positions, and having that type of versatility on the court and throughout your roster is going to be huge when you're battling through potential injuries, when you're battling through foul trouble, and of course, trying to get through one of the toughest conferences in all of college basketball, which is the Big 12. Moby's not worried about stats. He said that on multiple occasions, either on press conferences or interviews. He says he's focused on energy, activity, and creating momentum plays. And speaking of momentum plays, I think it's probably the most exciting play all last season. If you remember, he had one of the most energy-like dunks against Arizona, which was incredible. It was absolutely incredible, the dunk he had against Arizona. To me, it's one of the highlights of the season last year. If you want to talk about some of his off-court things, get to know Moby a little bit more. Loves fashion, art, photography. Describes dunking as making a statement. It's talking about that Arizona one, perfect time, which adds passion, of course, to the game, and is known for his bench reactions, positivity, and spark for teammates. But we might not see those bench reactions so much this season because, as I mentioned earlier in this segment, he's coming to Big 12 Media Days. So maybe at first, I'm not going to lie, I thought we were going to see maybe him as a role player yet again, but maybe the role for Moby is going to be a little bit more than we expected coming this season. Maybe at least early, or maybe we're seeing him as a leader because he's a returner to the team. Either way, exciting stuff for Moby here. He reinforces the culture and emotional impact. I think he brings joy and grit, a rare combo that every locker room needs. And just having him return, one of the few players return and being a fan favorite, I think is going to help as well. There's a lot of exciting stuff for him this year. And if he grows and becomes a better player, then I think Moby Ike Garuke could be a really fun player to root for this season for sure. I'm still curious to see what his role will be. I really am. I'm not sure if I want to bank him in as being in the starting five. Him going to media days makes me wonder that that's maybe the role, or maybe they're banking on it because he's a retention player. Right now, I'm still kind of waiting on that. We'll hear more on media days coming up next week. And of course, we'll have you glued in right here on Locked On Kansas State. But next, I want to stay on the international side. I think it's a perfect time to do so. We can transition from Ireland to Germany, to a player whose pro experience at the EuroLeague could completely change the Kansas State Wildcats ceiling. We'll talk about that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis, or maybe even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rauh Go Long. That's exactly where Rauh comes in. Rauh Go Long comes in. It's not just your normal ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. The process is simple. You connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, and if you're prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. So if you're ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom, head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Make sure you use our code so they know we sent you. This episode of Locked On Kansas State is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has something you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. All you have to do is pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Whether you're a casual fan or just love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. And with the absolute enormous amount of player props, there's something that definitely you can hit on. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Elias Rupiak could easily be a player that changes the ceiling for Kansas State this season. An international product coming over for Germany, and I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Wearing number 0 this year, something that doesn't seem to be common based on what I've seen from pictures in the past. He's either wearing 15 or 25, but it's going to go with the 0 on his chest on the uniform. Exciting stuff for somebody who's going to make history for Kansas State, for the program of men's basketball. He's going to be the first German-born player in Kansas State history, and he comes from Alba Berlin, one of the Europe's top pro teams in the EuroLeague. Jerome Tang has described him as a jack of all trades. He makes everyone on the floor better, and just an exciting stuff from him, where he fits in will be an exciting piece as well. Overall, while he was in German Pro B League for SSV Lok Berna Alba and Euro League with Alba Berlin, in the Pro B, he had 18.1 points per game with 7.4 rebounds per game and 5.5 assists per game and 47.7% shooting from the field. Bringing in all these stat stuffers to the team with high efficiency from shooting, this offense has the ability, if it translates well, folks, the offense has the ability to be one of the best in the Big 12 if it all works out. In the EuroLeague, he shot a little bit lower this past year in the EuroLeague, but it was against a tougher opponents. I mean, some that probably tougher than actual Big 12 opponents, if you will. But he shot 4.2 points per game, 2 rebounds, and just under 2 assists per game. Represented Germany in the under 18 and under 20 national teams. And while he was doing that, he averaged 11 points per game and 3 rebounds per game at the 2024 FIBA U20 Euro Basket. Some of the career highlights that I've seen is he has a triple-double, which was a 16, 12, 11, and a 27-point game against the ETB Miners. He's a really good player. He's versatile. He's got really high shooting efficiency. He's going to be a really fun piece for Kansas State to utilize this season. Tang said what stood out to him first was passing and his vision. The way that, quote, the ball just comes out of his hands easy is something that Jerome Tang liked. He's been compared to Royce O'Neal, a guy from Baylor, the Phoenix Suns. One of his for versatility, for toughness, for his ability to play in multiple roles. Got to really like that as well. And Tang emphasized that he could be an elite role player or a go-to guy. He's done both. So it makes you wonder where maybe he starts. Maybe he comes off the bench. Maybe he's a high energy guy off the bench for you, because the way that this roster is starting to shape up, it's hard to determine if he can find himself on the starting roster, even with having some pro experience. It's a good problem to have, looking at, based on you're comparing your bench from last year for Kansas State. He's already taken college classes overseas, so he'll arrive as a transfer junior with maturity and leadership experience. So we'll have a couple years of eligibility for him if he decides to stick around with Kansas State this next season. But ultimately, most of these international products come over to the college realms to try and get themselves more prepped for an NBA draft stock. So I'm guessing that's going to be his ultimate goal, whether that is a one and done type of scenario or he sticks around to play his second year and builds his draft stock. That'll be something that ultimately happens based on his success this coming season. He's got a good fit for Kansas State. So I think he was a good choice for him coming over to Jerome Tang. 6'9", 225, flexible forward who can handle the ball, defend multiple positions, and rebound in traffic. And to be honest, I think when you're looking at who's going to play the 4 and 5 this year, that is probably the biggest concerns for Kansas State. So having that kind of positional versatility is going to help him get some more minutes just based on how the rest of the roster looks for Kansas State this year. Kansas State can use him as a secondary playmaker or a matchup forward. And I think that, again, is going to help them in so many plug-and-play situations this coming season. His three-point shooting is developing kind of like Nate Johnson's, how it's probably the biggest thing that has to be improved. He was only 26.7 across all the leagues, 26.7% from three-point range if you're putting all of them together. His court vision and all-around games, though, are elite. So if you take that out, his three-point shooting, I think everything else is at the elite level for sure. So I think he is expected to provide immediate veteran presence, because although it's going to be his first time in a college setting, having that professional setting is just as good, if not better, coming to this type of team with that international experience in a young rotation that Kansas State's bringing in this season. So overall, mature, high IQ piece, stability, pro-level habits. You got to like what you're bringing here, and could be a potential 4 or 5 piece being at 6'9" if they decide to go in a smaller rotation. I think you could even push him to the 5. Don't see that happening, though. I think you get him more as a 4 with a wing type of player, or a movable wing or movable forward, depending on matchups heading into the season. I think he's the type of international veteran who raises your team floor, and which I think is absolutely important after the fact that you've missed 2 tournaments the last 2 seasons. So raising your floor is absolutely something you need. And of course, it raises your locker room standards, something that absolutely was a problem this last season. So overall, Really like what we see from these Kansas State players, whether it's international products that are just coming to Kansas State this year or some that are returning. And of course, some of the main transfer players that came over, like defensive mastermind in Nate Johnson. That's going to wrap it up for today's basketball breakdown here at Locked On Kansas State. We got more coming for you. We're going to start back up on Monday. We also have a couple crossovers to get into because the Sunflower Showdown will be getting underway. We got Kansas State week. It's a huge week for the show. Will the streak stay alive? Of course, we're going to have you covered here. Most likely going to have 2 episodes dropping every day of the week, Monday through Friday next week. So we're going to give you a little bit of break this weekend. So we'll be back here on Monday with another episode of Locked On Kansas State. Really appreciate you making Locked On Kansas State your first listen today. For your second listen, go check out Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you back here next time, right here on Locked On Kansas State.